Augusta's been out for a while now, and since I've had the chance to test her out more extensively, I thought I'd deliver my more fleshed out thoughts on the character, and evaluate whether my pre-release pros and cons were accurate or not. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. To start off, I stated previously that Augusta would end up being the new best Electro DPS, fully replacing Shangli Yao. This absolutely ended up being the case. While Shangli Yao is indeed still a powerful and competent DPS, Augusta really outshines him. After all, it is only natural that the eternally ablaze sun outshines the scientist lad. Her damage is simply so much higher, and she is 100% the brand new best in slot pick if you're looking for the best Electro DPS. No questions asked. It's not like the competition before was that hard, because you had Calcharo and Shangli Yao. We all know what the situation with Calcharo is. You can definitely make him work. I've actually been building him up on my own account, and I've been enjoying playing him, but he is definitely not strong by any means. And Shangli Yao, while he's definitely still competent, he's definitely on the lower end when it comes to DPS character value, so Augusta is 100% going to be your best choice in this regard. The outperformance is extremely clear. I would say the main thing that Shangli Yao has over her is that he can quickswap a lot more smoothly, whereas Augusta can't really play in quickswap teams. However, that doesn't really matter, because Augusta's best in slot teams are far going to outperform Shangli Yao's best quickswap teams. So that point is really just up to personal preference. If you personally prefer Shangli Yao's playstyle, you can still go ahead and use him, but in terms of raw damage performance, yeah, Augusta is definitely the one that's coming out on top. This was also a much needed release in my opinion, because of this exact situation. Every other element up until this point has a pretty solid DPS to their name, but Electro was the one that was really struggling, so now it finally feels like it's on par with the other elements. This point absolutely held true in my opinion. I also mentioned how she'd be able to use Mortefi and Frolova as teammates, thus making her quite a flexible character in general and accessible to a wider array of people. Okay, so in the case of Mortefi, yes, absolutely. He is a 4-star, and yet, he ends up being her absolute best in slot teammate as of now. Very, very strong combo. He's able to hold static mist and buff up her attack, while also just generally being able to provide some good personal damage himself. There is currently no 5-star teammate that is better to use than him, and I find that quite amusing. This makes Augusta quite free-to-play friendly in general, because it means that if you have at least one copy of Mortefi, then you're gonna be having a swell old time, because most of his value lies in his outro skill. Because that's where his heavy attack buffing lies. Now, her best in slot teammate is subject to change whenever Iuna releases in a couple of weeks, but as of now, he is currently the best in slot teammate, and the fact that he's so good now means that he's likely to stay good going into the future, meaning that just like Phoebe, this is a safe DPS investment to make, even if you're unable to go pick up the 5-star teammates that she wants. And I know that is very important to some people, because there are plenty of people who very reasonably will skip a main DPS if they need another really specific 5-star in order to make them perform at their fullest. Augusta is not like this. She's going to feel extremely strong even if you only have Mortefi. However, in the case of Frolova, so here's the thing. It works, but it's not as good as I thought it was going to be. This is because whenever Augusta enters her enhanced ult, she deletes all of her entities off field, and that includes Hecate, so you're honestly missing out on a very large chunk of Frolova's personal damage. You can still enjoy the heavy attack buffing on her outro, but there's not really any quick swapping potential, and you're generally just wasting your Frolova. It's fine, but you genuinely would rather just use Mortefi instead. It's a shame, and I suppose you can still make it work, but you're not really making use of the main reason as to why you would even want to use Frolova outside of the heavy attack buffing, because if that's all you're after, then just use Mortefi and save Frolova for a different tower side. Now, one additional synergy that I'm honestly quite surprised didn't cross my mind was Yinlin. Yes, Yinlin ended up being a competent Augusta teammate. Now, I do want to add something. The molding scientist is better for Augusta over Yinlin. Yes, like I said earlier, Mortefi is genuinely the best in slot here. However, that does not change the fact that Yinlin ends up being a competent teammate. This is more so a good thing for Yinlin fans than it is for Augusta fans, because like I've already said so many times, Yinlin's not going to be who you're using if you want Augusta's personal best performance. But if you're a starving Yinlin fan that's been waiting and waiting for her to get a brand new team option, well then here you go. Augusta is Yinlin's new best in slot team. It is the new best way to use her, and you're going to get the best damage possible out of this team. Now, like I said, it's not going to be the overall best way you can play this, and it's not going to be the best possible Electro DPS team, but you can make use of the Electro percent that Yinlin provides on outro along with her personal damage, and do pretty well. If you have String Master equipped on Yinlin, then the personal damage she does is honestly going to be pretty good. And this isn't some scuffed synergy either. Sure, Mortefi is a better teammate and he's a lot cheaper, however, this wouldn't even be worth mentioning if Yinlin wasn't a considerable contender. So I would say that the point of Augusta generally being quite flexible when it comes to her teammates does still hold true, just a bit differently than I initially thought. Not only is the 1.04 star her best choice, but the second half 1.05 star also ended up being really good for her. Another thing that I said that will be really good about Augusta is her fast movement. It would generally mean that she'd be able to comfortably move after bosses, and it would provide a very satisfying gameplay experience. I do definitely think that this held true. Obviously, gameplay is subjective at the end of the day, and different people are going to enjoy different things, but I would say that they masterfully executed Augusta's kit. Her quickfire movements feel super snappy, and she generally does very well against all boss content. I'd say that if you're somebody that's a fan of really quick-fire playstyles, then you should definitely consider trialing Augusta and maybe even picking her up. I would say the main gameplay flaws that have actually shown since her release is mainly the fact that you're not really able to quick-swap with her. It's kinda hard to do so because of how her ult works. So if you're really big on quick-swap teams, I would ask yourself whether you would genuinely enjoy Augusta's more hypercarry-like playstyle, definitely trial her a good amount, and see what you think. She is definitely a very well-made hypercarry, I 100% believe that. However, it is still a flaw of hers, because generally speaking, quick-swapping is very fun if you're good at it. And one other thing that I'm hesitant to call a flaw as much as it is a gameplay difference, you have to hold down her ult in order to cast it. This isn't exactly some major deal breaker or anything like that. I'm personally not a huge fan of it, but you get used to it after a while. It's just different. It's not really a bad thing. Just keep in mind that whenever you're playing Augusta, you're gonna have to get used to it. It'll take you a little bit of practice, but once you get accustomed, you're not really going to think much of it. You're probably going to be just fine with it, actually. And if anything, it was an interesting way to separate her ults. She's a character that has two of them, so it makes sense. If you're fine with those things, then I genuinely think her gameplay is very, very well designed. She has to be one of the most well-designed DPSs in this entire game, if not the most well-designed. Another thing that I mentioned as a positive is that she shields herself, but can I be honest, that really didn't end up mattering in the end. The only point of her shields is just to proc Crown of Valor and to stack up her signature weapon. The shields refresh very quickly, and other than that, they are just pretty useless all around. Sure, they refresh a lot, but you're really not going to feel their impact on gameplay. They are just there to proc her special gear and to support her specific playstyle. That's really all there is to it. So I suppose it's still a pro that exists, but I wouldn't really sell it as a pro or a con. It's just kind of something that exists. It's there. It really is just there for the sake of being there to support her sets and stuff. It's cool. It's a unique way to separate her gear from other people's gear, and you can still use the regular Void Thunder set if you have to. It's not a harmful gimmick that really restricts her options or anything like that, but even so, it exists. That's basically my opinion on it. Something that I mentioned as being one of her core flaws would be that her damage would be a little bit backloaded. I don't really think this matters. She has a couple nukes throughout her kit, and she generally feels like she does quite consistent damage all around. I wouldn't really highlight this as some major flaw of hers. The only thing that I was really wondering is whether she will be good in Whimpering Wastes or not, and I'm happy to say I think she's pretty decent there. I don't really have any problems with using her in there. So if you pull for Augusta, you're pulling for quite a good all-rounder in general. So, with that being said, I don't really think she has that many outstanding flaws. I will say not being able to quickswap is a shame, but even then, she has a different type of playstyle, and I honestly think Kuro Games executed it very well. And now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. Where do I personally think that Augusta currently stands in the meta? I genuinely think she's one of the best DPSs we currently have in the game as of now, in multiple aspects. Her damage is extremely high. She is certainly up there with the top brass. And in terms of playstyle, she has a super unique and satisfying kit. I think this is genuinely one of their most creative kit designs, and I'm very, very happy with what Kuro has put out here. They always have outstanding quality when it comes to character kit and animations, but this certainly takes the cake. She is 1000% a very worthwhile pull if you're one of two people. A, you're somebody that likes to collect a good DPS of every element, or B, you're somebody that just needs a really good electric DPS in particular because you missed Chang Liao back in 1.2, or even if you do have him, you're just hoping for an upgrade over him, which is very reasonable. And even with that being said, even if you're not in one of those two encampments, consider this. She's a good pull whether you're a new player or an old player, and I think it's really, really good that she has a good 4-star teammate. Some people will say that it doesn't really matter how many 4-stars we have, but I feel like Augusta directly proves that having a 4-star teammate that is good does so much. In my opinion, Augusta is the perfect example of why every 5-star release should have at least one highly competent 4-star teammate. because then you end up in this situation, where the character ends up being really good for veterans and new players alike, and there is a high investment option coming out soon in Yuno. And even if Yuno is vastly better, more Tefi and Augusta do not feel bad whatsoever. This is a perfect balance. Kuro Games, keep doing this. This is perfect. Now, how about yourself? Do you feel like Augusta was very well designed, or are you not a fan of her kit? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video is able to tell you my opinions on Augusta now that we've had her out for a while. This has been Juice, signing out. And when it comes to Augusta's kit, winners truly do win.